You know I loved it. But it seems like right now, a lot of people seem to be loving it. As of this moment, it's got an 88% certified fresh Rotten Tomato critic rating.
What a fun movie. This is absolutely the sweetest film I've ever seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Now, it's the #1 movie in the world, 2 weeks in a row.
Yes, hell yeah!
Is it though?
There's something about this film that feels extra special.
It all started with Fantastic Four, and the Marvel fans know that. That's what created what we know as the Marvel Universe, were these characters. And the fact that there have been many attempts.
There's a handful of fascists that I would just throw into outer space. That's what I would do.
Everything they're working on is terrible and is not very good.
This concept of superhero fatigue in one way is real because there have been a lot of superhero movies that maybe haven't been up to what they should have been or what the audience wanted. I think there's, mediocre movie fatigue.
Nerdrotic.com.
Friends, it's been said that July of 2025 will decide the fate of the superhero film, and now that the month is over, we can definitively say it's not looking good. Particularly with Disney Marvel, who just received another earth-shattering wake-up call. Some might argue that it's time for Kevin Feige to hit the panic button. Others might argue, like yours truly, that we're way past that. So let's not bury the lead here and get right to it. The Fantastic Four first steps might be Marvel's last steps. Because, and this is Variety saying this, not me, although I totally agree and I did not mean for that to rhyme. Fantastic Four craters by 66% in second weekend, and that includes an 80% Friday to Friday drop. Now, some of you out there might be saying, hey, this is just another Disney Marvel movie post-Endgame performing like another Disney Marvel movie post-Endgame, and in the past cases, I'd agree with you. But in the case of Fantastic Four First Steps, this is a devastating blow to Kevin Feige's regime. Now, I want to preface this by stating specifically to anybody from Disney, Marvel, or Hollywood, or the Access Media who may be watching out there, it's not like we haven't tried to warn you for years. But if anyone is in doubt that the Fantastic Four cratering in its second week isn't catastrophic at all, you don't have to listen to me. All you have to do is take a look at the current Access Media headlines and the meltdown from the Access Media shills. Normally, they're doing their best to cover for a questionable Disney Marvel failure, but it's not the case this time, for the most part anyway. Admittedly and unapologetically, I got a great deal of enjoyment watching the corporate legacy media and the influencers struggling to come to terms with the truth that they have been denying for years. Marvel is a damaged brand, and it was all self-inflicted, and this has already had a negative effect on DC, superheroes overall, because it's not just Marvel and DC, the theaters, and Hollywood. Just let this sink in. The 7th Dinosaur movie is going to soundly beat James Gunn's Superman and a Fantastic Four that is made and distributed by the company that actually owns them, Marvel. And now questions are openly being asked like, how did we get here?
Serious?
Is this superhero fatigue?
Yes. I know.
And my favorite, maybe it's time to blame the audience.
What? What the f?
And we'll get to all of that, but let's start with the box office. And we have a lot to choose from with our analysis. Forbes Fantastic Four box office in free fall, down 80% from last week. Explaining that 80% drop from Variety, Fantastic Four braces for big second week drop. Fantastic Four grossed $11.7 million domestically in its second Friday on the big screen, marking a devastating 80% drop from its debut Friday to Friday. Collider, the Fantastic Four first step, falters at the domestic box office. The Wrap, Fantastic Four sinks 66% from box office opening weekend despite strong reception. Marvel's latest film isn't holding as well as Superman. Again from The Wrap, Fantastic Four stays #1 but tumbles 66% to $40 million at the box office. The always reliable comicbook.com, Fantastic Four wins box office in second weekend, but there's bad news. And my personal favorite from IndieWire, and yes, that looks like Iowan Grufford, but it's actually Johan Griffith because only the Welsh could spell like that, recalls the Fantastic Four that made money. We were being true to the comic. While First Step suffered an unexpected blow at the box office this weekend 20 years ago, a quartet of superheroes found success with audiences. But we're gonna go with Variety's Fantastic Four craters by 66% in second weekend. Heavens to Murgatroyd, they use the word crater, how hyperbolic. Marvel's first family might not save the day after all. The Fantastic Four First Steps is quickly losing steam in its second weekend, signaling the comic book adventure isn't connecting at the box office beyond the film's core demographic of superhero fans. And apologies for stating the obvious, but let's make this clear distinction now. There are superhero fans and comic book fans, and while there's still a little crossover, they are now, strangely enough, two separate entities. Heading into FF's second weekend, the box office analysts were projecting a 40 to 45 million opening weekend, and now it looks like it's just going to be a 40 million opening weekend, a 66% drop, which some will spin is on the high end of the low end, and this is the kind of bullshit we have to deal with. Like Deadline, who seems to take a little bit of exception with the usage of the word crater by their comrades over at Variety. By the way, both of these Access Media rags are owned by the same company, Penske Media. Craters is a big word, as 60 percentile drops are par for the course with superhero films.
You are coping and seething.
Again, the box office analysts predicted a drop between 50 and 60%, and again, the box office analysts were wrong. Now, we can't go without comparing it to Superman, which dropped only 53% from its very whelming $125 million opening. Still, it's held on pretty good. This painful fall is surprising for the Fantastic Four because the Marvel tentpole has the benefit of positive reviews and word of mouth. Well, we'll get to that, as well as a clear runway in terms of competition. Well, that part is true, and that's bad news for Hollywood because while the summer movie season isn't over, the summer tentpole season is. Fantastic Four Missteps, being on the high end of the low end, beats out things like The Marvels, which was down 78% in its second weekend. Captain America Black New World was down 68% in its second weekend, which is awfully close to Fantastic Four. Ant-Man Quantumania was down 70% in its second weekend, and Thor Love and Blunder was down 67%. But not to worry, because according to Variety, The First Steps, the movie's actually called First Steps, is pacing to outgross this year's prior theatrical disappointments. I think the word you meant to use there was flops, outgrossing Captain African American and Thunderbolts. So that makes Fantastic Four First Steps not only the best Disney Marvel flop of the year, it's the highest grossing box office bomb of the year. See, I can play the spin game too. You're the tallest midget, you're the smartest retard. And this is a rare day because I agree with Paul Tassi on Forbes when he says it's difficult to spin this. I would also agree with him when he says this is far from a roaring "we're back" war cry, which Disney Marvel absolutely, positively needed. He continues, it's not quite clear what happened here. Actually, Paul, it is, but we'll let you have your say. The film reviewed well among critics, and 86%, well, that's par for the course, really well among fans at 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. A site where the audience score outside of television is incredible since the Captain Marvel fiasco, a site that has the Thunderbolts rated higher than Iron Man, and the Marvels with an audience score of 79%.
Too damn high.
Slightly, but not much more credible would be IMDb's 7.4 out of 10, and Metacritic has it as 6.7. Anyway, back to Paul, but as we've seen, that doesn't quite matter, and I'm glad he's come to terms with that fact. Now, he brings up a film we just mentioned that has almost identical critics and audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes, Thunderbolts, a self-admitted miss by Marvel. That's strange. I seem to recall Disney CEO Bob Iger saying this just a few months ago.
Frankly, we've all admitted to ourselves that we lost a little focus by making too much, and by bringing Marvel, by consolidating a bit and having Marvel focus much more on their films, we believe it will result in better quality. And I think the first and best example is Thunderbolts.
And frankly, a diluted focus,
they were not as good. Quantity, not as high quantity in our case. Diluted quantity, attention needs attention.
Please stop.
Shut up, Bob. Just a reminder, we're a little over halfway through the year, and this is the third major Marvel film, the sixth major Marvel project. They just released another animated series on D+ this week, Eyes of Wakanda, and we have one more show to go, Wonder Man, based on the comic book character, and I have to say, the resemblance is uncanny. And this brings us to the question of why the Fantastic Four First Steps failed, something that's perplexing those influencers and Access Media members. It's a mystery wrapped inside an enigma. According to box office analyst Jeff Block, Fantastic Four is not a top-tier Marvel franchise, never has been. Remember, this ramps up into the Avengers. That's the real payoff. All right, considering that the top tier characters in Marvel have either been killed off, not recast, or completely neutered, I have a question for you, Jeff Block, and everyone in the audience. Who are the Avengers? And they don't own their biggest character, Spider-Man. I would disrespectfully disagree.
It all started with Fantastic Four, and the Marvel fans know that.
The answer to this mystery, my friends, is really quite simple. Miscasting an overexposed Pedro Pascal as Marvel's smartest man, Reed Richards, a female Silver Surfer, and nerfing one of Marvel's greatest villains, Galactus, in a third act that goes full MCU ruined any chances of this film succeeding. Now, would this film have done better with a properly cast Reed and a properly cast male Silver Surfer? Yes, with some obvious tweaks to the script, and no, I'm not going to give Marvel credit for lowering the bar so much that we're just happy Johnny Storm isn't gay. As far as ramping up to whoever the hell the Avengers are, it's clear not that many people care anymore. And as far as that good word of mouth is concerned, well, that 66% drop says otherwise. And it's not like that drop was off a good first weekend, it was off a very mediocre one. And no, I'm not going to let this particular subject go because it ended up to be true. Gender swapping the Silver Surfer was an incredibly dumb decision made by a lot of highly paid people, including Kevin Feige, who should be fired for it because they should know better than anyone else that one bad casting decision can kill your project in the crib, and here we are. Again, now, was it a big reason this movie failed? Yes. Was it the only reason? No. Pedro Pascal fatigue is real, especially when we're talking about a guy who's never been a box office draw. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying he immediately turns off a large portion of the potential audience, and to think otherwise is just naive. Although when we see him again in Avengers Doomsday, I think it will be unintentionally hilarious and meta if they show the Council of Reeds, which will be the Council of Pedros. And while I credit Disney Marvel for finally giving Jack Kirby the credit he deserved decades ago in your films, with that tribute at the end, I would say you would show him more respect by actually adapting his characters as he intended. Garrett, roll out Peter Jackson.
We didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honor Tolkien by putting his messages into it.
Words every single creative should internalize before taking on somebody else's work. But there is another theory out there put up by social media influencer John Roca the Outlaw. Kindred spirit. I used to be one of those. Some people might not want to hear this, but it might be time to stop putting all the blame on the studios or creators for underperforming movies. Well, who is there left to blame? It might be time to start looking at the intelligence level of the moviegoers.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Now, Johnny boy, it looks like you're frustrated because a large portion of the public doesn't agree with your opinion. But it seems you, well, maybe have never known or at least forgotten the same thing the studios have in Hollywood. The customer is always right, whether you like it or not. As far as the bigger picture is concerned, and again, this shouldn't surprise me, but it does, social media influencers are asking, how did we get here? My time to shine. Hello, queries. Fantastic Four First Steps is expected to have a huge drop this weekend despite great reviews and cinema score. What is going on with Marvel?
Uh-oh, retard alert! Retard alert, class!
With respect to the returning subscribers who've probably heard this all before, but for the new ones, welcome who haven't, I'll recap this, but try to keep it brief. It turns out it wasn't a good idea to kill Tony Stark and kill or age out Steve Rogers. Turns out it wasn't a good idea to make Thor a himbo turn Hulk into Mark Ruffalo and not recast T'Challa. Turns out it wasn't very forward thinking to bypass decades of comic books that sold in the millions to adapt canceled comic books that sold in the thousands. Turns out it was downright retarded to bring Kang into the MCU, and everything that preceded his appearance was his will canonically. And then you can the character, making it all for naught. Turns out it was ill-advised to spam a bunch of crap content for which even if half of it was good, you wouldn't have this problem. And it turns out that was due to casting directors and writers based on their identity rather than hiring them based on their ability. But I'm not without solutions. Marvel Studios, maybe you should consider mixing in a couple of straight people to your marketing team.
So what I love about being a part of this universe is the diversity and the inclusion, and so people can recognize that people who look like you are out here. For all the young black boys and girls out there, I'm here. So.
Ew! That's nasty, man! Ew!
Can you imagine how many lives this is going to be saving?
0.
How long will you play Captain Marvel for?
I don't know. I don't know. Does anyone want me to do it again?
What?
Witches are queer inherently just because
we are outcast and like set aside for many reasons.
That's not how it works.
El niño sin amor. Por eso le dicen namor.
¿En serio?
El niño que creció sin amor. Namor.
Mi amor. Papa. Niño.
And the worst decision of all was bending the knee to identity politics and making the deliberate decision to introduce more female characters than male characters, bringing us the MCU, which led to a half a decade of projects that were mostly disappointments, underperformers, bombs, or outright flops. And my friends, that is only the tip of the Disney Marvel failure iceberg. And just to pile on a little bit more, it probably doesn't help that Deadpool creator Rob Liefeld is out there roasting Kevin Feige, admittedly for not inviting him to a party, but I'm here for it. Marvel used to make films that expanded the base with excitement that picked up the general public. The cast was poorly served, it was also poorly cast by a poor script and dodgy FX. Galactus' second act is far superior to the third act. Then he says Marvel is suffering from Feige fatigue, which he got from my buddy Pauly at Latino Slant. And I'm guessing it doesn't help that the one guy who's created something pretty good in the last few years for Marvel, Bo DeMeo, who was ousted from X-Men 97 for, among other things, clapping back against the VP of Marvel Animation, and big surprise, she's got a hyphenated name, Dana Vasquez Ebahar, who asked him to turn off his comic collector brain because that's the last person you want doing your comic book adaptation. Bo DeMeo is saying Marvel Studios has a major leadership problem, an even bigger brand issue, and is just generally out of sync with its core audience. And I couldn't agree more, because the House of Mouse subsidiary Marvel Studios is now facing the very harsh reality that they do indeed have catastrophic and possibly irreversible brand damage. But it's not limited to them. This brings us back to the sage, the scholar whose wisdom outshines us all, particularly when he was questioning the intelligence of moviegoers who also probably make up the majority of the audience for his channel, John Roca, who follows up that statement with this: if a phenomenally stupid film like Jurassic World Rebirth can crush films like Superman and Fantastic Four at the box office, then something might be wrong with all of us. Speak for yourself, and not the studios or the creatives. Okay, a lot to unpack there, but thanks for admitting that Superman and Fantastic Four are underperforming. And this brings us to the dreaded subject of superhero fatigue, which will immediately be followed up with bad movie fatigue, or Hollywood fatigue, or woke Hollywood fatigue, or Pedro Pascal fatigue, or fatigue, or Feige fatigue. Is it one of those things, some of those things, or all of those things? Yes, maybe, I don't know, time will tell. Bottom line, DC and Marvel both didn't do themselves any favors by releasing a bunch of bad movies that flopped, despite the fact that he is historically stupid for blaming the audience for any of Hollywood's failures. John Roca is probably accidentally right about one thing: the dinosaur movie is dumb, but at least it understood the assignment. And that's probably why the 7th dinosaur movie is curb stomping 2 superhero movies that, despite how I feel about them, people generally seem to like, that just so happen to be underperforming. But before throwing shade at Jurassic World fans, I think we may want to consider that Fantastic Four and Superman aren't exactly high art or great films.
Is there anything here that catches your eye?
No.
Does that one work?
No.
Is this no good?
No.
Does it work on any level for you?
No.
Does it have artistic merit?
No.
So all of this is terrible.
Well, frankly, yes.
Now, obviously, the Fantastic Four is going to do far worse, and let this sink in. None of the 3 Marvel films released this year are going to end up in the top 5 box office performers. Oh, and this just came in. The Fantastic Four actually performed worse, with only a $38 million weekend and a 67% drop. Oof. And as far as Superman is concerned, it's definitely going to win the superhero race this year, and one could argue it should have won July. And it didn't. Now, there's the argument out there that the $800 million film is the new $1 billion film, but considering that Superman's not going to hit that, you might want to adjust those numbers. And one could blame ticket prices being too high, oversaturating the market, diminishing returns, China not being a factor anymore, or Trump. And obviously, aside from blaming Trump, those are all valid arguments. And maybe eventually the the studios are going to finally realize that the general audience has kind of moved on from superheroes and you need to bring those budgets down. But unless you find some magic pool of talent out there that all of a sudden knows how to write good stories in Hollywood and more importantly knows how to adapt comic books, I'm not sure if this is going to get fixed. Let's be real, Warner Brothers has had plenty of time over the decades to figure this problem out and they've never consistently done it. And Kevin Feige, specifically the one who has created all the problems for Marvel, has had a half decade to fix them and hasn't, so I don't know how anybody expects him to do it in the future. Sure, Spider-Man is coming, the costume looks great, and it looks like that movie's gonna make a lot of money. Unfortunately for Kevin Feige, it's a Sony production. Again, this isn't just a problem for superheroes, it's a problem for the theaters and Hollywood. I think we can all agree it hasn't really been a great year for movies in the theater. But so much for Survive Until 25, we have now gone through the era of the woke-buster, the flop-buster, and now we are firmly in the era of the slop-buster.
Nerdrotic.com.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.